Hello everyone, today we are tackling the rather thorny topic of well-being and talking about balancing that corporate and personal responsibility for well-being. We know that this is an issue. We've got various surveys to tell us that the working lives of teachers and leaders are not where we want them to be currently, and our recruitment and retention crisis just compounds this issue. But who is really truly responsible for well-being? Well, we need to think about personal responsibility of all of the individuals working in schools, but also the corporate responsibility. And there is a sweet spot in the middle of those two. So we're going to, first of all, look at that corporate responsibility, then moving on to empowering staff to take that personal responsibility. How do we do that? And then we need to have a look at this term moral injury and unpick what that might mean for us in schools. So lots of organisations are getting really wise to this, and they are publicising their commitment to workload, and therefore to staff being able to prioritise their well-being alongside doing their job. You can see various examples there from the Education Alliance, from Reach, and from Dixon's. You can find all of these documents on the Fulcrum if you want to have a closer look. But putting your message as an organisation out there in the public eye is a way of holding yourself to account and allowing your staff members to hold you to account as a leader as well. There are other organisations, obviously the DFE, have got their ways to reduce workload, and then there's some really interesting blogs on this as well. So you may all be deeply aware of Chemical Orthodoxy, Adam Boxer's blog. He's got tons of ideas on this, lots of them involving kind of digital hacks, so that might be your thing. And Joe Kirby's also really good on this as well. So I'll pop links to those in the Fulcrum if you want to have a further read of reducing workload and how organisations can be helpful as opposed to being unhelpful when it comes to managing workload. And that's a way to support teachers to then have time and capacity to manage their own well-being. Louise Bomber, who we've talked about before, has a section of this in her book, What About Me? So as an organisation, do you promote equality and inclusivity? Is there a culture of trying to say yes when staff ask for things, whether that's to do with childcare or looking after an elderly parent or needing to have some time for a kind of outside hobby at some point in the week, trying to say yes and being flexible. But something that we shouldn't need to talk about, but I think we really do, is the importance of greetings and humour and encouragement and celebrating success, because in our very busy days, we sometimes just forget. The number of times I have sent a message or an email and then had to resend it and start with hello and good morning, and just reminding myself of these basic habits that we all need to prioritise, even when we're busy, especially when we're busy. We need to prioritise these. And as a leader as well, we don't know what people are noticing. And it may be that if you don't say good morning to somebody, then that's going to affect how they think of you for the rest of that day, the week, maybe even the rest of time. So remembering to say good morning. Ed's really interesting on this when he talks about how he stopped wearing his headphones as he walked from the train station in Feltham to Reach Academy, simply because it meant that he was able to hear if somebody said, oh, hello, good morning, and he was able to be present. So you are on from as soon as you walk out of the car into the building, or even from the train station in some cases. Making sure that there is actually time and space for breaks and social time. If the school day really is a 10-hour day or a 12-hour day in your context, then there needs to be time within that day for people to take 15 minutes, half an hour, where they are not expected to be looking at their phone, where they are not expected to be on duty, where they can do some life admin, or they can just sit down for a few moments and take a bit of space. If we don't allow this, if we don't make sure that this is possible, then we are not fulfilling our corporate responsibility, and there is absolutely no reason for somebody to stay in an organisation that doesn't allow for people to have a little bit of break and social time throughout the day. Development is a really big one. Training, practice and coaching, management and mentoring. We've talked about those throughout various different videos, but without that development, we're not prioritising staff wellbeing. And access to specialist support. Lots of pastoral staff now do get access to clinical supervision. If that is not something that's available in your setting, it's definitely something to explore. So if all of those things are in place and people are still not feeling great, then maybe we need to think about the personal responsibility and the extent to which we've empowered our staff to take responsibility for themselves. Here again, Louise Bomber's got some good suggestions and some good kind of categories of things that you might want to be thinking about. So do staff have an opportunity to develop curiosity? And if they don't, are we able to empower them to do that, to think about their own internal experience, whether it's their thinking, their feeling, their physical levels? Staff need to be able to take rest, exercise, and have a healthy diet. All of those three things, they need to figure out their own kind of schedules for that. There may be things that as an organisation you are able to do to make that more likely. I remember at Dixon's we used to have our lunch with the children, but we asked for more vegetables and we asked for more salad, and that was arranged because if we're eating with the children, then we want to also make sure that we can maintain that healthy diet. Making sure that staff have access to connection with other members of staff. Maybe that's setting up the social groups as we saw before, enabling people to get involved in networks, but also pushing people to say, well, what have you done to connect with your fellow members of staff? What have you done to create a network if there isn't one in your area? And just saying, you know, it's not just what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country sometimes. Self-expression, personal narrative, both of these things are really crucial, as we all know when we're working in schools, that you have a way of expressing yourself, and that is something that only you can develop for yourself, but celebrating that and being really clear about that. And little rituals as well. Sometimes people have an end of day ritual where they tidy their desk or they go and speak to a certain member of staff before they leave. But just thinking about those end of day rituals, particularly as a way of closing the day out and going home and enjoying the other parts of your life as well. Again, just a little Brené Brown moment. So I did show this in a previous video, but I don't think it hurts to come back to it. This has really helped me to hold myself to account for having difficult conversations and creating boundaries, as it says in the first one, for myself, of how I can be so that I can be my best self, as the saying goes these days. So just something to explore perhaps. And finally, being brave to have those conversations that you might need to, those rumble conversations. A phrase that I've used many times now is the story I'm telling myself. So if I'm feeling uncomfortable about something, just going to the person that I need to go and have a difficult conversation with and saying, the story I'm telling myself is that you think I'm really incompetent. Is this true? And 9 times out of 10, the person says, no, of course not. So just opening yourself up to have those slightly more difficult conversations will often result in better well-being. And then the final point on this one then is moral injury. So moral injury is a phrase that has, as you can see, been around for just a few years, really, in education circles at least. But where it comes from is quite interesting. So lots of teachers that feel like they have to comply with perhaps wrong-headed mandates. So implementing strategies or behaviour management programs that they don't think will best serve their students. This is why onboarding is so important and getting everybody clear on the reasons why we do things, the purpose, not the power. Because this study in the American Educational Research Journal finds that some of these choices may be causing moral injury. So the feeling that they or their colleagues are making decisions that go against their deeply held values, So something that could be affecting the well-being of staff is this sense of moral injury that they don't agree with either the teaching strategy or the behaviour management or something else in the school. It's going against their values. And really, when we get to this point, it's a question of, can that be fixed? Is that something that can kind of be aligned? And if not, then the organisation is not right for that person. If it can, then it's about communicating with real clarity the purpose behind the teaching strategy or the behaviour management programme, for example. So even though it was coined by military psychologists and psychiatrists for the PTSD, that's perhaps too narrow of a description for what happens in schools, and we want to think more carefully about what this moral injury might be. It's not PTSD, we're not saying that at all, but that there can still be this sense of injury of people who are doing something that goes against their values. So as I said before, going back to that alignment piece and the onboarding piece around why things happen and the real clarity of the purpose over the power. So if you have got the balance right between corporate and personal responsibility for wellbeing, then please let us know. If you've got any other thoughts on that, then share them in the fulcrum. Thank you so much.